Welcome to the Mind Lab, where neuroscience meets storytelling. This is the show that takes you deep into the mysteries of the brain, its power, its quirks, and the incredible ways it shapes our reality. I'm Cortex, and today we're tackling something truly fascinating: how your brain deceives you every single day without you even realizing it. To help us explore this mind-bending topic, we have Amygdala, a specializing in cognitive illusions, perception, and how our brains build reality. Welcome to the Mind Lab, Amygdala. Let's start with something simple but pretty mind-blowing. Is it true that everything we see, hear, and even remember is actually just a construction of the brain? I mean, most people believe their senses are showing them an accurate reflection of reality, but research suggests that's far from the truth.
That's exactly right. Most of us assume that our eyes work like cameras, capturing the world as it is, or that our ears pick up sound in a way that's pure and objective. But in reality, our brain is less like a recording device and more like a storyteller. It takes raw, messy sensory data and turns it into a coherent narrative that helps us make sense of the world. For example, your eyes only pick up a small portion of your full field of vision with any clarity. The rest, your brain fills in based on memory and expectations. The same thing happens with sound, touch, and even taste. Your brain makes predictions and edits the incoming information to create an illusion of a seamless, fully detailed experience. This is why we fall for optical illusions, because they reveal the shortcuts our brain takes. So, basically, we're walking around inside our own personalized version of reality. And it's not just with vision, it's with everything. Your emotions, memories, and even the way you interpret people's intentions are all shaped by the same process.
That's crazy to think about, and I imagine it can have huge implications in everyday life. For example, I've heard of studies where eyewitnesses to a crime can be absolutely certain they saw something, but later, it turns out they were wrong. Is that because the brain sometimes just makes things up?
Yes, and this is one of the most shocking ways our brains deceive us. Eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable, even though people often swear they remember exactly what happened. The problem is memory isn't like a video file. It's reconstructed every time we recall it. Imagine your brain as a storyteller rewriting a novel every time you read it. Each time you recall a memory, tiny changes occur, sometimes inserting new details or blending in unrelated information. Over time, the memory can become completely distorted and the person will still believe it's 100% accurate. If someone remembers an event, they're not actually remembering the original event. They're remembering the last time they remembered it.
That's terrifying and fascinating at the same time. But it makes sense because I've also heard that our brain doesn't just passively process information. It actually predicts what's going to happen next. So, in a way, we're living in a reality that's partially pre-programmed by our own expectations. Can you explain how that works?
Absolutely. This is called predictive processing, and it's one of the most powerful things the brain does. Your brain isn't just sitting back and waiting for sensory input. It's constantly guessing what's coming next based on past experiences. For example, if you're in a conversation, your brain is already predicting what the other person is about to say before they finish their sentence. That's why sometimes you think you hear one word when they actually said something else. Your brain just filled in the gap based on what it expected. That makes sense. I've definitely misheard song lyrics before, even when I was sure I was hearing them correctly. Exactly. That's called the Mondegreen effect. Your brain fills in missing sounds with words it expects to hear, but it goes beyond just hearing. Your brain does this with vision, touch, even emotions. Have you ever been home alone and thought you saw movement out of the corner of your eye? Your brain wasn't just seeing, it was predicting, based on patterns it learned over time. Sometimes those predictions are helpful, other times they create false experiences.
Okay, so here's the big question. If our brain is constantly making predictions, filling in gaps, and reconstructing memories, can we ever fully trust what we see, hear, and remember?
That's the million-dollar question, and the answer is yes and no. For everyday survival, your brain does an amazing job. If it weren't for these shortcuts, you'd be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of raw data coming at you every second. But when it comes to objective truth, that's where things get messy. Your brain's main goal is to help you function, not to perfectly reflect reality. It's like a news editor cutting and reshaping a story to make it more readable, but in doing so, some important details might get left out or altered. So, awareness is the key. Once you know your brain is filling in gaps, you can start questioning your own assumptions. A few strategies: double check important memories, write them down early because every recall distorts them slightly. Be skeptical of your first impressions. Your brain makes snap judgments, but they're not always accurate. Pause before reacting emotionally, because sometimes your brain is tricking you into thinking something is worse than it really is. That's the beauty of neuroscience. It gives us tools to better understand ourselves.
And that's exactly why we started the Mind Lab. To our listeners, have you ever experienced a time when your brain completely tricked you? Let us know in the comments or tag us on social media. Join us next Saturday as we decode the brain, one story at a time. Until then, stay curious.